Hey, this is going to be the meta video for Jutland Open that is coming up here in Denmark. Let's go. I'll just need to find the right. Here we go. So Jutland Open. Jutland Open is a 20-man event. There's one ringer, and it's going to be blue and blue full-on competitive, 1,000 points, single generic reinforced platoon. There's a 16 order dice cap. I think this was done because when Sealand Open ran, like Jutland and Sealand are the two, not the only parts, but the two major parts of Denmark, right? Where most of the population lives. And when Sealand Open ran, one of the things that we sort of figured out was that potentially we should have had a dice cap just to make sure that people finish their games. So I like a 16 order dice cap for 1,000 points. That should be enough. It does limit MSU spam, but single generic reinforced platoon does the same. So it's not really a thing that we need to worry about massively. You can only take one free unit, which is as it should be, in my opinion. They're playing double envelopment, sectors, meeting engagement, key positions, and no man's land. So there'll be 2 kill point missions, 2 placement missions, and 1 objective missions. A little bit different from what I would normally expect to see. Like having 2 kill point missions is more than most tournaments choose, but they're all book missions, so hey. Now, looking through the lists, by the way, lists will be linked in the description here. I see a spread between 11 order dice and 16, with a lot more going for the 16. So 11 order dice is low. It is very low for 1,000 points here in the Danish meta. So my guess is that whoever's bringing that is not as such a competitive player, or is a new player who's just trying stuff out and potentially will not do very well. 11 order dice, you're massively disadvantaged in the dice pool. You won't get to act when you want to, which can suck a little bit. But if that player goes into it with the mindset of, I want to learn, then he'll do perfectly fine. Oh, and by the way, the average is 14.8. Just notice that the average is 14.8. Go and look at some of my meta videos for some of the American tournaments, or for the one that's running, I think in the same weekend, in Sweden, the Bob Philby tournament. That had an average of, but that was lower, wasn't it? 13 point something. But a lot of American tournaments, for instance, are running on 13 something order dice as well. Oh, I'm sorry, I got a head cold. Bit of a sniffle. So the Danish meta is fairly high for order dice for 1,000 points. Nations. What nations are we seeing? We're seeing 7 Soviets. Sorry, not 7. 4 Soviets, 4 German, 3 British, 2 American, 2 Italian, 2 Japanese, 2 Finnish, and 1 French. For me, that's a really good spread. That's a lot of different armies. That's a lot of, like, all the major powers are there. I really like that. That's a good spread. I like seeing the Finns crop up twice. I like seeing the Italians crop up twice. The Japanese as well. The French are there. But no minor nations except the Finns, which, yeah, okay. I think there are a few minor nations that might actually have done well. Here, by the way, we have one of the Finnish armies going. This is Christopher's very lovely painted Finnish army. I also think that the number of Brits is a little lower than I would have expected. Right now, the meta is very much that Gurkha Brits are like the top dogs of competitive bold action, and we are seeing a couple of like one Gurkha army at least. So they are represented, but a lot of players are trying out different stuff. And with them out of the main picture of the competitive scene here, I think potentially the Soviets will take the top positions during this tournament. Maybe. We shall see. It does also mean that Japan and Italy has better odds because they're not very likely to run into a Gurkha player that will simply out-assault them. So a lot of the other armies, they have a lot of different options just because the Gurkhas are not really there. The builds that I'm seeing is we're seeing a lot of mixed bag, which is what you would expect from a lot of the armies that's coming, right? The Americans, the French potentially can skirmish really well as well. German armies typically do mixed bags of some sort. Like there's a lot of these nations that really do mixed bags. So a lot of those, as expected. Then we're seeing 5 barbecue lists, which potentially is a good idea, but potentially maybe not. So the barbecue is really a hard counter to Gurkhas, but we're not seeing many Gurkhas, which so are the barbecue lists going to do well? We can't say for certain, and it really depends on how well people play against the barbecuing. There are 4 foe tank lists which has a lot of armored vehicles of one sort or another. Bren carriers, of course, being one of the most common ones taken. And there are 2 Death Star lists that has a very expensive unit, typically a heavy tank of some sort. There are 2 assault lists, one of them Gurkhas and one of them Italian M battalions. So that is very low for the Danish meta, but I guess it will give a lot of chances to the non-assault armies, especially the Japanese here, which can be an assault army, but in the build that we're seeing here isn't really. There are 3 leaf blower armies, one of them being a multi-rocket launcher, where there are 2 multi-rocket launchers in the army, and a single horde army and a single army of camping Germans. Of course, I had to include this image here of Jan Petersen's very nicely painted trophy girl from the Sealand Open tournament here. This is from the Hot and Dangerous collection from Wargamer in Poland. He won her and painted her up. She's 54mm, so not bold action, but a trophy to have in your display case. So Camping Germans is an army build where you have a lot of LMGs. You're sitting back, you're spraying and hoping that the enemy will suffer for it. For me, the list ranking goes between a 2, a non-competitive army, and a 4, a very competitive army that could win tournaments. There are no like true fiber lists that I don't think I could improve in any way, like min-max just a little bit more. But on average, the lists are 3.3s, so a good spread for a tournament. There's a lot of standard tournament armies and above. My predictions. I think that these 5 will do well. I think, and this is both based on the list, like how highly do I rate the list, but also on knowing the players. I know most of the players going, so I can also evaluate how good they are. And that combined has given me these, like I gave a ranking to each player, gave a list ranking to each player, combined those, and then these are the guys who came out on top. I think Michael C with his 16 organized Soviets, which is a mixed bag, has elements that he's been used before. So there are flamethrowers in there. There is scouts, so he has a lot of forward deployment. I think he has 4 forward deployment units, which means that in missions with preparatory bombardment, he can make sure that he doesn't get hit. In missions where he can deploy on objectives or deploy in scoring zones, he can do that. it's a really strong build, and then maybe especially for the pack here. Michael, though, is notoriously unlucky with his dice, although luck is not a thing, it doesn't happen. But every time he has a single dice roll, a 50-50 always goes against me, as he says. So he just needs a little bit of better dice luck for this tournament, and I think he can do really well. Michael E actually played against Michael C in Sealand Open and won against him with his Italians. So I think Michael E knows his way around the Italians by now. He is bringing a 13 organized Italian list with M battalions, a single unit of cavalry. And for me, that was a 3.5. It's a strong assault army, but it does, because it's Italians, it is a little bit weak to being pinned down and not being able to assault. Torben Davidsen is a new player who did really well at the Sealand Open tournament, which was his first. And he is bringing 15 organized Brits, Gurkhas, and Dhaka, so a Dhaka Steward, early war motorcycles, the whole shebang. I think the army could potentially be optimized a little bit more, but that's just me being nitpicky, I guess. It's a 4. It is a really strong and very, very meta army. He even has that one unit of engineers in there, which is so meta right now, right? And Torben, the main thing holding him back right now is experience, in my estimation. I think he's a really good player. He's a very, very focused, competitive player. He wants to do well in tournaments. I think with a little bit more experience, I think he can do really well. So, and I am going to give him a few training matches before Jutland Open, I hope. We shall see what he can learn and do. So I also think he can do well here. And then Kristian Lyngvald. Kristian came second at Sealand Open with non-Gurkha Brits. So, and he has been playing Brits forever and knows his way around them. He's got 16 order dice. He has a lot of flamethrowers in his list, and it's a faux tank list, like Bren carriers everywhere, and it's of course going to be beautifully painted. Kristian almost always wins the painting competitions. He's a really good painter. His list is a 3.5, but he is of course a fairly good player, so I'm guessing he will also do well if he can focus, if he can get over the fact that he is at heart a competitive Flames of War player. I think he can be a competitive bold action player as well. And then Kent, another of the top competitive players here in Denmark, has been with us abroad. He also really wants to, like Torben, he really wants to be a top dog in the competitive scene. Isn't really yet, but is getting there. He's bringing his 16 order dice Soviets with, it's a little bit of a mix. It's got a little bit of cavalry. It's got some barbecuing with a couple of flamethrowers. It's got faux tank. It's a really good mix and very, very mobile. I think he can do really well with that as well. So I think these 5 guys are where it's at. I think one of them will win, and I think the rest of them will at least be in the top 10, potentially even the top 5. To everyone going to Jutland Open, wish I was, but unfortunately I'm going to Madrid. There we go. So, good luck everyone, and I will see you after. Cheers.